So with indoor season upon us, I've got a couple of things that I want to share with you in regards to sight pins. There's about 750,000 of them available on the market today, and they're all very different. And I've got a few tips that I want to share with you that might make or break your indoor season this year. So I've shot a lot of indoor archery tournaments and I've had some decent successes at various different venues. Each one of them had their own challenges. As you know, if you've ever shot indoor archery and you've gone to different ranges after shooting at one range your entire life, you can be shocked at how different the lighting conditions are. You know, things like the actual lighting quality, different light types. There's fluorescent lights, there's LED lights, there's halogen lights, there's high pressure sodium lights. Depending on the venue you're shooting in, they could be using various different lights. And oftentimes they'll actually use mixed versions of where the lights are, the types of lights, and where they are on the range. Sometimes they'll light up the targets more, sometimes they'll light up the actual shooting line more. It really depends, and each venue is different. I've learned a few things over the years, and most of those came from embarrassing failures because I just wasn't prepared for the given scenario and the lighting conditions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition the camera over the bench and show you the various different sight pins that I have here and explain to you a few of those tips that I've talked about, as well as when I would use different types of sight pins for various different conditions. Before I do that, though, I did want to bring up that I do have my apparel store up and running again. This is a new shirt, one of the old designs, but a new shirt from the new place, Zazzle. I'll have links in the description below and a card at the top up there to my Zazzle store, where you can get some of the old designs as well as some of the new designs too. And if you're interested in these sight pins that I'm going to be showing you, I will have links in the description for the various different pins that I'm using. Those are affiliate links with Lancaster Archery Supply, so if you click those links before you shop with them, it will help this channel out, and I appreciate it. I'm going to reposition you now, the camera, over the bench, so that way we can get to talking about sight pins. So as you can tell, I have lots of different things that I can use at my disposal here that I've amassed over the years. Not only sight pins, but things that are related to sight pins themselves. Stick-on dots are not just for compound shooters. Stick-on rings that you actually use to put, these black rings on your actual sight. They aren't just for compound shooters. Fiber optics also are not just for compound shooters, and you can see I have various different colors. Colors from blue to pink to orange to a different orange to green. They all have various different properties that I like and I dislike for various different reasons. I even use yellow sight pins from time to time, and it's actually one of my favorite ones to use outdoors at 70 meters. One of the first things that I want to give you a tip on is to have different sight pins, to try them. Borrow some from friends, buy used ones that people don't use anymore, because they're all different. They all have different features. They all have benefits and drawbacks. They come in various different sizes, and they also all aim very differently. Some you will love, some you will hate, and you'll find out really quickly as you start to try them. That's very important. Now, how you switch them is even more so important. You'll see that I have a lot of sight blocks that are already mounted on these sight pins that'll mount right to this Excel sight. So even though it's a silver block because it came from a silver sight, it works and locks in place just like the black ones do. I have some older versions that were dropped down, and you can see that it has a drop as opposed to it coming straight off the side. All of these things matter dramatically, and it can affect how easy it is to swap from different pins. So it's a really simple thing to do that is easily looked over, I believe. But all you need to do is take two sight blocks, hold them side by side like this, make the sight blocks flush so they're in the same exact position, this way relative to each other. And then all you want to do is make sure that you get the actual sight pins, the center of the pins themselves, lined up relative to each other when you're holding this flush just like so. And you'll see that these two sight pins are just about in the exact same place depending on how you look at them. So that means when I'm shooting this sight, and if for whatever reason I need to change to this sight, this pin, in the middle of a tournament, and I can do that without having huge changes in my arrow impact points. So if for whatever reason the lighting dramatically changes, or I realize I've made an error in the sight pin that I am using, I can swap them out and not affect my score. So it's really, really important to do stuff like this, to set them up the same. Or if you don't have this type of sight where it has different blocks that you can replace and get different ones very easily, get yourself a set of calipers or some sort of device that you can measure sight pins as accurately as possible. So what you can actually do is measure from the block here out to the center of the sight pin, like so, make the measurement, write it down, bring it over to this next one, and make sure that it's in the exact same place. You could actually measure relative to the actual sight bar itself to where the sight pin is, and make sure when you're swapping pins out, everything's the same. Now, when I mentioned this is an older design with a drop, right? If I have the drop on versus the regular, it's gonna also affect my arrow impact point, but in this way, it's going to affect my up and down because it has dropped the sight pin. So I'll actually hit higher with this pin that has a drop and lower with this one that doesn't have the drop when I swap them back and forth. Now, one of the most painful mistakes I have learned in my indoor archery career is when I was using a sight pin just like this here. I think I was actually using this one, which has a single dot that is stuck on with a sticker in the center of the lens. And you can see here, see as I'm rotating the actual lens itself, I'm getting glare like that. And where I was at Indoor Nationals in Snellville, Georgia, which is where George Riles and his crew works out of there. And it was in a strip mall, essentially, and the parking lot was behind the shooting line. The targets were this way, the parking lot was this way. There was glass windows with no blinds, no nothing. And the way the sun was, it was actually relative to the targets, towards the target side, coming over the building, hitting the parking lot. And as cars drove by the parking lot, it cast light into the actual venue. And I got these glares like this. And as a car would drive by, the glare would go. And as the car drove by again, it would go like that. And my sight pin was moving as I was aiming at a target, and I only brought one sight pin, and I totally botched that entire Indoor Nationals. I shot horribly awful despite practicing extremely high because I never had my sight pin move as I was executing shots. So it just freaked me out, took me out of my element, and it was a massive problem. So make sure you have backups, make sure you have different types. If you like stuff with lenses, they work and can help do lots of different things for you, like have nothing that holds the actual pin in the middle. You can run rings, and in this case I have 2 rings, so it's extra thick. You can even have smaller housings with smaller rings and make different things work for you depending on what you're looking to fix or looking for help on. Now this one here is almost the same size as this one, this Excel sight and this Titan sight, and this one doesn't have a lens. This one just has a fiber optic. And this one, you can actually change the fiber optic out. You can rotate it and put it at different locations from 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, noon, 3 o'clock, whatever you want. And then once you tighten it back down, it stays there and it doesn't move. It also has the ability to adjust the brightness by turning this actual rheostat, for lack of better terms, to block some light or to reveal more of the fiber optic like that, depending on what you're looking for. Do you want a very dim sight like this? Or if I expose more of it, you can actually see it brightens up. So lots of different features on different sight pins, and you can get various different benefits for different scenarios. So for me, if I was to be at a venue like I described to you, where there was a parking lot and people were driving by in it all the time, I would avoid anything with a lens because of this glare issue. If I was shooting in low light conditions, I might use a fiber optic like this AAE gold sight pin because sometimes low light conditions really give you an advantage if you can see your sight pin. For example, at US Target Nationals, I can't remember where we were, maybe, I don't know, probably somewhere in the middle of nowhere like just about all of them are. For whatever reason, just like every other USA Archery Nationals, it seems, there was a delay due to severe weather. Some severe lightning came through and we had to delay by 3-4 hours or something like that. The morning line was delayed and then I think the afternoon line got delayed or something like that. And the afternoon line, we had to shoot the rest of our ranking round, about half of it, under lights. And they turned lights on a soccer venue, which is actually quite dim relative to other lighting conditions that are out there. And I can't tell you how many people couldn't see their sight pin like things like this, because there was no fiber optic. Or if people were shooting with a ring, just a ring like this, they weren't able to shoot high scores because they couldn't see where their sight pin was. I, on the other hand, had fiber optics. And because of that, I actually changed, I believe, from a yellow one, which I commonly use at 70 meters. I like the yellow because it actually kind of disappears in the center of the target when you're aiming, right? As long as the sight pin's in the yellow. And it allows me to just kind of relax and know that my sight pin's in the middle without really having to see it and pay attention to it. But the yellow wasn't quite bright enough. So I believe I switched to something like this green here because it's very, very bright. So in my bow case, I have a pile of different sight pins and a pile of different fiber optics because I might need to change colors depending on the lighting condition. Now, some bonus tips that I've got for you for some indoor archery tips is taking one out of the compound books here. This sight pin, actually, it's just it's a Titan sight pin that's based out of Australia. It's a clear glass lens, has no magnification, so it doesn't change anything when you're aiming, and it's legal to use an Olympic style recurve. What I did here, and why this dot is so large, is it covers, except for the tiniest little sliver around the dot, all of the yellow. And so many compound shooters that struggle with target panic indoors because it can be tough and difficult to hit that little baby X all the time. And so you got to aim really hard with a compound to hit that. Some of them will put a very large dot like this because basically no matter where it is for them, it's always going to be touching the yellow. So they're able to relax. And that's something that I was playing with just to see how it was. Even though my sight pin was moving. So like say if my pinky nail was the yellow, yes, it's in the dead center, but I can move quite a considerable amount and even be quite a far ways off the target itself and still have the edge of the pin touching the yellow. It actually reduces a bit of anxiety and made indoor shooting a little bit easier for me to shoot, and I've shot some extremely high practice scores with this sight pin. Another thing that is actually quite beneficial for indoors is these rings. Stick-on rings, you can use various different sizes, as you can see, and on this one here, I used 2 rings to make it a thicker one versus this one is a single on a smaller pin. And so it has different effects and different feels to it per se. So sight pins that have rings just like this are great indoors because you just stare at the middle of the target and look through the ring and kind of let it just be there, and your body will center itself because the human body is really good at centering circles on circles on circles, and it's just a natural thing that we do. But when you go outside and you have to aim off because of the changing wind conditions, having a sight pin reference like this one here, this AAE Gold, I find to be vitally important because once I start aiming off, say if this was the center of the target and I had to aim off here, I tend to hold a little bit low for whatever reason. So this sight pin, and this one in particular comes from the side, I can use it as a great reference to make sure I'm maintaining my elevation when I'm aiming off. All of them have various different features. Even this Excel one here, this one's also fiber optic, but look how massive that pin is compared to this one. This is using 19 thousandths fiber, and this is using 29 thousandths fiber. Not one sight pin is good for every single person, but I can tell you that every single person should have multiple sight pins. And if you have a sight like this Excel that has different blocks that you can easily replace, get yourself a couple of extra blocks, set your sight pins up so they're the exact same location left and right when you line them up like so. So that way, when you swap them out, you hit the same place, and you're not so afraid to change these in the middle of a tournament. If you have any sort of planning ahead of you, what I would do is I would practice with this one, put this one on and see how many clicks I had to change my sight and vice versa. So that way I'm prepared and I know exactly how much to move my sight pin to get my arrows to stay in the middle if for whatever reason I have to change my pin in the middle of the tournament. Hey, if you like this video and you wouldn't mind, please do consider sharing it. Also, hit that subscription button and the notification bell down below. Genuinely, all those things help this channel out and help it grow. Also, if you wouldn't mind, please do check out all the different links in the description below for many different ways you can help support this channel. There's apparel, there's affiliate links, there's YouTube memberships, there's a Patreon page. 2 of those things get you access to a private Discord server where archers are helping each other out. And I can't thank my supporters enough. Without you, I wouldn't be able to produce this content for free for archers around the world to enjoy, at least not to the level and not as consistently. So thanks.